Welcome to Power Yourself, where we discuss the most important topic in the world, you. In our third installment of our stress series, today we explore how changing careers and ultimately transitioning into the retirement world can be stressful. We're excited today. We get to interview Dan Cezar, professional musician and retiree, to explore how we can deal with the excitement and challenges of changing our career path. And with me, as always, is Jillian Power. Are you excited about today's episode?
I am so pumped.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And I'm excited. Full disclaimer, I've been friends with Dan Cezar for, oh my goodness, almost 20 years. And I've heard so many great band stories, so many great musician stories. One of the most interesting people I know. And I'm not just saying that because he's sitting in the room with us. So I'm excited. So
he says it when you're not here.
Yeah,
so.
Totally. So welcome, Dan Cezar.
Thanks. It's a pleasure. Great to be here.
So I'm going to just start off with just sort of grilling you a little bit just about your life as a musician, because I find this so fascinating. You were originally a full-time musician. And what I find amazing about this is that you did not have like a quote-unquote regular job through most of your adult life. You were a working paid musician. Is that right?
That's right.
So what is a life of a professional musician? Like I know you were an agent for a while, you were putting together a band, you're touring. What does your average day look like when you were a professional musician?
Well, I was a professional musician starting, I guess, when I was about 14, 15 years old.
Wow.
Now being 64, we're looking at 50 years. Freaks me out just saying that. But yeah, it's a different, obviously when we're talking corporate, it's a whole different world. I mean, just starting with the hours. I mean, obviously 90% of the time we're up till the wee hours of the morning. But I took my craft fairly seriously to the point of being a bass player, being a musician, and always had a plan, trying to have a plan to better myself as a musician. Even throughout the week, what are my plans to get through the week? And I guess I learned a lot of that from the corporate world as well. But just, something about playing music, there's something to be said about doing something you love. The old cliche, find a job you like, you'll never have to work another day in your life. But so I felt very fortunate because I enjoyed everything about the music business. I mean, there were some rough days or whatever, but that's to be in anything. Jill, sorry.
No, I'm like chomping at the bit here already.
I'm babbling.
No, you're not.
Go ahead.
And there's so many people out there who has that passion, maybe who are doing a corporate job now, and they're like, I want to know how to make it work, or, is that possible? Can I actually take something that's a passion of mine and make it a reality? How did you do that?
Well, I think, I think I have my parents to thank me for that. We're just always being on the business sense of life, because being a musician, I think they always thought one day I'll grow up and, kind of say, oh, that was a fun 4 or 5, 6 years. So obviously when we got to be the age of 20, early 20s, mid 20s, I'm still playing and still trying to better myself. They went from one extreme to hoping I'd be over this to really supporting me, and it was really nice. I remember when they bought me a piano for my birthday once, and it was just, it meant the world to me. It was just, because I knew they were on side and they believed in what I was doing. But on the business side of it, you have to make a living doing it. So, you have to hook up with the right group of people. You're on the same page, have the same goals. Obviously, you need to have your finances together to make a living, and music can be challenging in that way. So you really have to diversify, would be the word, as far as a musician, being able to accept whatever, how am I trying to say it, other jobs, right? Like, say, musically, I'm doing a job I'm not crazy about, but it makes sense in the big picture, as far as making a living doing it. I wasn't that kind of guy. I'm sticking to my guns and I'm playing this kind of music. I'm a jazz guy and this is only what I'm going to play, and which would be fun if you were okay financially. But,
But knowing and having that flexibility to be able to say, hey, no, I have to take a couple of random ones too.
Exactly. Now, and that was very important. I really believed that was a must, as far as having your financial situations where you're not worried or stressed out, as opposed to living week to week is where I'm going with. So there's a plan to it, as opposed to just, okay, this is what I'm doing this week. But, trying to look further into the future,
So we're so excited you're here today. We're talking about stress and dealing with stress in our lives. And I know one of the things we talk about is relationships. And it could be relationships with ourselves or relationships with a significant other, friends, family. When you're in a band, you could have 4, 5, 6 people. different personalities, different backgrounds, different values. Is that one of the most stressful parts of having a band?
I don't know if it would be stressful, but in a situation, yeah, you get a group of say 6 to 8 to 10 musicians together. Personalities are from A to Z, so that's always a challenge, and respecting their personalities to a point, But that was a real important part of it, being able to have a relationship in a band, and whether it's taking criticism, giving criticism, and it's all how it's delivered, right?
Let's talk a little bit about that. I'm interested in that, about having a difficult conversation with somebody. What would be an example of a difficult conversation you would have with somebody in a band? Would you have to, say, fire someone, or maybe discipline them, or try to get them in a different direction? Maybe their musical standards weren't up to your standards?
Yeah, I could think of two situations that come to mind. One time I had to let go of a guitar player, fire him, and I just hate even saying anything about firing him, and who am I to fire? But he just, as a musician, he just wasn't getting it. Never coming to rehearsals with homework done, and late, just you name it. There was just everything going against this guy, and we tried talking to him about it several times, and it just wasn't working. So I was the band leader at that point in time and had to let him go. The other one was a good friend in the band, but just had an alcohol problem. And it got to the point it was interfering with the band. We were losing different gigs, so it was hard to do. And a friend of mine, so to sit down and saying, "Hey, we're letting you go," and this was her passion and a band she was quite proud about, and just for that reason, it's just
So Dan, those are really to me, when you're talking about them, it's like I could feel stress. Like I don't know if it's like, for me, if that was me in the situation, the build up before doing anything would be stressful, because I would kind of know that something has to happen. So it would almost be a little anxious. Yeah. So can you talk about that process? Because it seems how we are talking about stress. So how did you manage to be like, you know what, time to deal? Like I got to do something here.
Yeah, that was stressful for both situations. But a friend told me something that kind of sticks with me to this day, and it was years ago, that just, cutting to the chase and having that conversation. Because I was putting it off day after day and tiptoeing around it and trying to figure out the time to do it. And basically, as this friend said to me, he said, 5 minutes of pain of doing something you don't want to do, and just cutting to the chase and having a good, solid, professional conversation. And these are the reasons why.
Good for you.
So that really helped me, because I was putting it off for 3 days, and I need to do this today, So I did find it very stressful, but that really helped, and I just cut to the chase and had that conversation.
So realizing that at some point there had to be a start. You had to make a start with this difficult conversation.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And just saying, going back to his quote, just 5 minutes of pain, doing something I really don't like, and then I felt so relieved. I left there just, take that big breath. I felt bad that I hurt their feelings, but I believed I was very professional about it, very kind about it. I'm not that kind of guy who's going to, "You're fired, get out of here, you creep," or, you know what I mean? I'm not like that, but just, they were friends. Everyone you work with, you try to respect and not attack, I guess.
Good for you. So it is a chance here. So for people listening, realizing, there's some hard conversations maybe that they need to have in their life. Mm-hmm. So would there be any advice that you would give them for somebody that they have to have a difficult conversation with, that they might respect, that they might love? What are some ways that you would pitch, since how you've just, not recently, but since how you've been through this, anything you would kind of toss out there as pieces of advice for those people?
Well, just being honest with yourself and with them, I think, would be key. Like I said, it's never fun letting anyone go, no matter what the circumstances are. But I think, just being upfront, honest, and to the point, and having reasons why. And usually when you get to that point, it did just come out of nowhere. There's been a build up to it. There's, hopefully you've had a couple of conversations on, this isn't working out, and can we try to do this better? And
I love it. The honesty, it always speaks to me.
Yeah, and it's funny, when I first met Cezar, man, it would have been almost 20 years ago, and I found out he was a working musician in a band. I thought that was so cool. I still do. But the more I got to know him, and the more we talked about the amount of times you had to either fire people, or people would quit, or they wouldn't show up to gigs, and I thought, it's a wonder anybody ever makes an album or ever tours ever. It's just amazing to me that any band can ever stick together for any length of time. After hearing you just talk about, at length about the different personalities and everyone having a life, and somebody might have a baby and now they're out of the band, or somebody might get another job in another band and they're gone too, or somebody might have a different musical taste and they say, I don't want to do this anymore, and they just leave. And I can imagine it was 20, 30, 40 years of you being a professional musician, but it wasn't always easy. In fact, I would think a lot of it was a lot of hard work.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that comment.
So you came out of the musician world, and at some point you decided it was time to move into the office. So
Absolutely.
you went from being a professional musician, you had traveled the world, you had your own schedule. Was it tough when you started in an office of having a more defined work schedule?
Absolutely. It was a real big change for me. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of with the musicians, hours. I mean, it's 90% at nighttime and wee hours of the morning. I couldn't believe that people actually met at 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning and had meetings. I just, you guys are setting me up, and I thought, come on, Of course, when I first told my boss that, he thought it was quite comical, to the point it was every Monday morning at 7 o'clock we had that meeting because of me opening my mouth. But yeah, it was a very different. Well, even doing 10 to 13, 14-hour days, I've never seen that in my life. Right. A 5-hour gig would be us pushing the envelope. That would be like, are you kidding me? 5 hours.
Sure.
And even in that 5 hours, we would have 3 half-hour breaks. So all of a sudden, I'm doing 12 to 14-hour days. Yeah, it was very different.
I find too, and this is my own personal opinion, so feel free to agree or disagree. Full disclaimer, I had worked with Cezar for many years in an office together, and I always found that you had a great sense of fun about you. Like, life is an adventure, and you weren't scared by challenges. And there's other people that work in an office, and we've all had this experience, that just seem completely joyless, no sense of humor. They're just there punching in and punching out. And I always thought it was so funny. I was so blessed. I was so thankful that I got to work with you for so many years, that you made work fun. You were always the first to sign up for something new, or if there was an event around the corner, you were a part of it. And I always thought I was very fortunate. But was that tough for you? Because you're coming out of an environment where everybody was like you, and now you're working in an environment where you're the only one like you. And I just did you ever really think about that?
Yes and no. But going back to a comment I said earlier, even you get that 6 to 8 to 10 musicians together. I mean, you're talking about personality from A to Z, right. And so similar to an office, you adapt. You find people you like. You find people you just want to stay away from that person, or you create friendships, and some not so much. And office politics, it was a whole new world for me. I just never seen so much. That was hard to get used to, but
right.
Yeah.
What are some ways that got you through? So making a huge shift, first of all, going from something you're passionate and you're in love with to now switching to a corporate, you mentioned, job.
Yes.
What are some ways that you helped set yourself up to succeed with that transition?
Well, I think making the change to the corporate world, and the most interesting part about that was in sports. So something else I'm very passionate about. So being at the age of 40, I'm just making that change, feeling very fortunate that I'm doing 2 things I absolutely passionate about: music and sports. I'm a hockey nut. I'm working in Calgary Flames. Life is good. Everything to me was new. Seeing all these teams come in every day, practicing, or coaches and players I idolize are in the building and they're on the ice. 2 concerts. Again, going back to the music thing, being tied into that. I don't think I've ever missed a band sound check, because it just amazed me just to sit back and watch and take it all in.
So you took passion.
Yes, I guess, yeah.
One passion for
didn't
another.
answer your question, but yeah, you're right. I guess there was probably passion to it. And I was intimidated, very much so, because I just wasn't familiar with the whole office structure. As I said, the hours, the people. And making that change, there was an area I was certainly embarrassed about, and I tried not to dwell on it, but I hit it very well. Being my age, and so this would be back early 90s. Now I'm starting to work in the corporate world in sports. Technology was a grind for me. I didn't grow up with technology. So, of course, everyone around me, 20 years younger, was well adapted to it, where I was struggling. And so, yeah, it was a bit of a struggle. But that would be my biggest challenge of making that changeover, was not being confident in some areas. Sales, I was confident in, so that even growing up as a musician, I was always in the sales part. I managed the band. I kind of sold it all the time.
So how did you take something that you were not comfortable with? So let's say the technical Wow. Technology piece. And how did you own it? Like, how did you increase your confidence level around that technology piece?
That took a long time because, as I said, I was embarrassed about it. So I kind of kept that between me and myself. I mean, people knew or whatever, but I would never do anything on a computer in front of people because a lot of times it was even simple as typing. I was a search and peck type of guy, and to me, I was embarrassed to do that in front of everybody, so I'd never do it in front of everybody. But just asking a lot of questions, and people I was very comfortable with saying, "I'm sorry, I'm just not getting this," and so I asked a lot of questions and continued, but yeah.
It's so funny you mentioned that, and I'll throw in a quick story. So a couple years into my friendship with Cezar, I own a set of drums, and I fancy myself an okay drummer. I'm not any great shakes. I don't claim to be. Of course, I'm looking at Cezar as the god on the mountaintop who's learned how to play bass over the last 45 years, and he's a master bass player, right? So he invites me to jam the one day, and I go over to his place, and it was the exact same experience, but instead of you on a computer, it was me on a set of drums. Right. I'm looking at you and the other musicians in the room, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm the phony. They're all going to know that I have no idea what I'm doing here. And yet it's so funny to hear you say that in an office environment, because I know you, I've known you for years. You're so smart in, like we all are, in certain areas of our lives. I mean, you could walk around a music studio and I couldn't even hold a candle to what you would know in a studio. And yet in an office that got flipped a little bit. So it's interesting how the skills didn't necessarily translate from the music world into the office world.
But that's the thing. Everybody has something and a whole bunch of stuff they're so good at, and everybody's going to have those areas that they need to work on or they're not so confident in. So it's about, I love how you said you asked questions and you started to just ask and kind of inquire that information, because no one's perfect. No one knows it all going out the gates, man. Good on you.
Yeah, I can understand how when everybody has their strengths, and it just came down to that, or me thinking that way, where I was, okay, I can accept this. And I'm just a quick story of my boss. There's a boss that I totally respect. His name's Kelly Kissio. Just one of those guys that's just a great athlete. Whether he's playing golf, whether he's playing hockey, whether he's just, and me being in the sports nut, I just, why can't I be like that? Or at least that was my, But I remember him saying one day, because he was at a golf tournament, he hasn't even swung a club in 2 years, walks up and hits the ball 380 yards and wins the longest ball, and he didn't even take a practice swing, right? I'm going, unbelievable, how does this happen? And I said, I bet you're good at every sport. He said, yeah, I'm pretty good at all of it, And then he said to me as I was walking out the room, because I'm shaking my head going, why can't I be like that? And he says, you know what I would do to learn how to play guitar and sit around a campfire and sing? And it's just kind of like something went off my head, and that's all he meant by it. And we all have our strengths and our downfalls, so that was something that stood out.
And that's it.
I think we were fortunate, you and I having worked together for so many years, we were fortunate to be in an environment where we did feel comfortable asking for help, and there were enough different skill sets. I was in the finance area, he was in the sales area, and we could complement each other. If he needed help with finances or computers, we had a nice IT guy there at the time, and later an IT lady who was awesome. So we would often ask for help, and it was an environment where it was okay. I think on the whole, there wasn't a lot of making fun if people didn't know something, because everybody had their own little piece of expertise, and as a whole, no one person could possibly know all of it.
Exactly.
So it was a fun place to work.
They introduced us to a new ticketing system out of nowhere. So finally I'm learning things, getting there, and they introduced something completely. So I'm, as we said, stressed. When I went from 0 to 10 on the stress meter, like, oh my God. And this IT person you're talking about is Blair. I'm sure that's what we're talking about. Yes. And he's going around to show everybody in sales and ticketing the new system. As he's sitting there showing it to me, I'm just acting like I've got all this. I'm walking right through this, right? And 2 days later, as I mentioned to you, I was embarrassed, but again, a good enough friend that I could just be brutally honest with. I said, Blair, I got to be honest, I didn't get a thing, and I was just too embarrassed to tell you that.
Oh so my God, Cezar, I love that you think that right there.
Really? Yeah.
It's that courage of vulnerability.
Yeah.
Oh,
well, he was a good friend as well, but someone I'd feel comfortable, similar to Karl. I said, guys, I'm sorry, I'm just, And as he said, man, I get it. He said, I grew up with this stuff. He said, you're the same age as my dad, and he's the same way. And anyways, one day after work, he stayed with me for about 2 hours, got through it, and he said, any questions? So he was a good friend that was there for me all the time. But it went from me thinking, okay, I think I'm finally comfortable with what I'm doing, and then they went and changed everything on me. So very stressful, but thank God for good friends.
And thank God, it's beautiful that you're giving him so much of a shout out, but it starts with you. So it starts with the person who's stressed out,
Yes.
having the ability to say, no, I need help, or I don't get it.
Yeah.
So good on you to
thank
reach
you.
out
Yeah.
and say, actually, no, I need another run through about that. I think that's really important. And I think it's something as humans, we kind of have a block towards. Like, it's almost like we don't allow ourselves to ask too many questions or allow ourselves to not be perfect at everything.
Yeah, well, nobody wants to look like a dummy, I don't think.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
sometimes the fear we have, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I noticed, you had mentioned when you were a working musician, you were a lot of times in charge of the band. You were acting as an agent on behalf or a manager for the band. And a lot of it is people and relationships, either with club owners or other bands or musicians, that sort of thing. And then you move into the corporate world and you were in sales, and that's also a people business. Did you draw parallels between the two when you were in sales in a corporate environment? Was there times when you looked back and went, oh, I actually have this skill set because of my time as a musician?
I guess in the sales part, yes. But didn't have a whole lot of confidence in the sense it was all new to me what I'm selling, and we're talking millions of dollars out of nowhere, and I'm just thinking of a band was not millions of dollars. But I didn't. It was similar, so there wasn't much difference as far as knowing what I'm going to sell. I knew that I obviously had to have a plan. I'm one of those people that believe with not having a plan, your plan to fail. It's just that simple. So I found things like that really helped me get through the week, and I'm a very structured person, so if I know what I'm doing all day, I'll be fine. But if I'm just kind of winging it, so it was nice always coming in knowing what I'm going to be doing. Now sometimes that falls right off the rail, like in any job. Things are different on a certain day, and you struggle a bit. But
what was the sales aspect of it stressful? For me, I'm not a salesperson, so when I talk to salespeople, I think it sounds very stressful. You have an unlimited quota you have to meet. You're always trying to sell more stuff. You're making commission, and sometimes your pay is up and then down and up and down. Was that a stressful part of your life, or was that something you were used to because of your background as a musician?
I would say it very stressful. That's when I started really, in those days for sure, stress was front and center of everything I did, because if I wasn't in the top few sales guys, I was taking it personally, going home thinking about it, as opposed to leaving the job at home. Simple things like going to bed. Now I'm not sleeping because I'm thinking about it. I did find it very stressful.
And so that right there, I'm sure anybody listening kind of went, I understand that. I've been there. Yeah. So being somebody who is there, what's some recommendations? Because we all do. We all, unfortunately, let work bleed into our personal life some days, or some days maybe it's not even work, it's something else. But that's stress. It's a common thing, and it's going to come up. So in your experience and you successfully handling stress, what are some ways that you would pitch?
Well, it took a while for me to successfully handle stress. Like I said, I didn't even know I had the stress as bad as I did. And there's people that deal with it well. Like I said, there was other people I was working with in the very same office, and they weren't nearly as stressed out. Well, they weren't stressed out. I was the one taking it personally. I was the one taking it home. But I got to a point I just realized I need some help to get through this, because I was really struggling with it. It got to be years and years, 20 years of it. Averaging, working, I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say 70-hour weeks. So between the hours, the stress, not eating properly, a lot of it was just put on by myself. And then I just eventually got help, and that turned into a whole new thing that really helped me out. And
what was the impetus? What happened in your life where you said you flipped the switch in your mind and you said, "Oh, I recognize there's a problem here. I need to get some help"?
Well, unfortunately, it got to a point it was a little out of control, and I'll kind of just try to make this story short. But one night, I really, again, kind of embarrassed to say it, but I really had, I don't want to say a breakdown, but I remember being home one night. I remember my wife was away. She was in New York, and I was just home by myself. Came home after another 14-hour day. Probably have done 15 of those in that month at least. And I was just really tired. And then I ended up just kind of breaking down crying. I know it kind of sounds weird, but that's kind of what I did. And came out of it about 5 minutes later going, what was that about? I was just, I'm still in my suit from work. I'm sitting in my living room. It's dark, and I'm crying. I'm going, this is wrong. There's something wrong with me. You know what I mean? As I said, I just took it to a whole new level of being stressed out. And oddly enough, there was a couple of signs that night, and a friend of mine posted something on depression on Facebook. And I'm just flipping through Facebook, so I decided I'm going to look into this. So I read it. I'm like, well, that's very interesting. Then I'm turning on TV, and TSN's on, and there's Mike Lounsborough talking about depression and stress and ADHD. And so I listened to this. So there was 3 signs out of nowhere that were just right out of the clear blue of everything I'm dealing with. So on Monday morning, I called my doctor, my family doctor, and I obviously he's not a counselor or anything, but I just knew that we're good friends and that he'd point me in the right direction. And I did. I went and sat with him for about half an hour. He gave me his laptop, and he said, these are 30 signs of depression. And he said, be really honest with yourself and just knock off each one. Anyways, I had 17 out of the 30, far as anxiety, far as not sleeping well, far as now it's time to get up in the morning. I'm so tired because I'm not sleeping. Bad diet, anxiety. It was a whole steamroll of things that I was. So I ended up getting some help, and by help I mean getting some counseling, and we discovered I had ADHD and stress. So it was a crazy time in my life.
There's so much there that I just want to first of all, shout out to you, because I love it how you seem to give credit to everybody else because you're like, oh, these things just happen to come on. Or in my eyes, looking at it, it's like, no, you were self-aware enough to notice those things.
Well, as I said, just sitting at home by myself on a Friday night, coming back from work, and I'm sitting there and crying and going, something's up here. I mean, this is not a normal guy or a normal situation, right? And I knew I needed help, and I just didn't know which way to turn.
But a lot of people don't give it the time and energy to realize, no, this doesn't feel right to me anymore, and something's got to change.
Absolutely.
So once again, I feel like I'm shouting out to Cezar all day.
All right. I'll take it. No, it's all good.
But good for you to recognize and seek the help.
Yeah.
And after you did that, because there's so many people out there that, there's a stigma, or, maybe they're just too nervous, or you don't want to make that jump. Mm-hmm. So I guess the kind of thing I'm hoping you can give them is, what changed for you when you reached out? So you mentioned counseling and stuff like that. What are some ways that impacted your life?
Well, just being able to talk to a professional who deals with this on a regular basis, on the do's and the don'ts and the approaches you might want to take, far as just reading, listening to him was just so helpful. There were different situations he would explain. And I just took his advice, and I didn't even know I had ADHD as well, which I probably, you knew that, Karl, because I couldn't sit still for 40 minutes, right? I said, so, okay, I got to go visit Karl, or I got to go visit somebody, and even if you were busy. But that was part of my job, that I just couldn't sit all day at the desk and just do my job without running all over the place, right?
And I did notice that. I didn't recognize it at the time that's what it was. Yeah. I just thought you were a really cool guy in the office, because while we were all sitting in these endless meetings or sitting at our desks working like drones, you were walking around talking to people and telling stories and having a laugh and, getting into trouble. And I always thought this was the cool guy in the high school running around. And I'm going, man, I want to be like this guy, because he is this adventurous guy, not realizing, of course, that there's a possible medical condition.
Yeah, exactly. For this. Yeah. But sorry, go ahead.
No, but it was just fascinating to see how what I considered from my vantage point to be a positive attribute at work. I'm thinking, man, this guy's so full of life and he's so full of adventure. And meanwhile, you're saying, no, this was actually, I guess I don't want to say it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it was causing stress, because being forced to sit in training for 8 hours would be torture on you.
Absolutely was torture. Absolutely, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But I did, as you mentioned, as far as reaching out, there's a lot of help out there, and it's if you're talking counseling, it can get expensive, but there are people that don't charge, that are very helpful, and they certainly put you on the right track, and it's just nice really listening to them and their advice and the do's and don'ts. So I found it very helpful. So
I think I think we all need that little pep talk sometimes, and I think the more willing we are to say, you know what, I could use that right now. I think it just helps us be our better selves.
Yeah. And I think you get to the point where, you're, like, as I said, I was embarrassed. I was just embarrassed about it, I guess. And really, there's no reason to be embarrassed. There's a lot of people who are going through the exact same thing.
That's exactly
Cezar,
it.
So just to hear that, or at least that's how I felt. And when talking to my doctors, are saying, it's okay. We're going to get through this. It's not a big deal. You're the one making, he was saying, you're the one making a big deal. Yes, you've got some things you need to work on, and we'll work on that together. And he was just he was a great counselor in the sense he just made me feel relaxed. I listened to him. I did the homework he asked me to do, read books he asked me to read, or listen to DVDs, or, different stories. And it was very helpful. And I was really reluctant about trying drugs for the ADHD. And that was his thing, just to try it. And, he was telling me he had a very good friend that's very, very spiritual, and no drugs, no nothing. And but it said it saved their marriage. And that's what he was trying to say to me. So it's not like I'm trying to sell you these drugs. He's not making a profit from it, but it did help him, and he was a very good friend of his. So I decided to try these drugs, and I'm into a year of it now, and we'll see.
But that's it. It's about trying different things,
Yes.
I think, no matter what that is. Like, I love how you're talking about books that they gave you or just advice. And I think, first of all, once again, you're just earning so much love from me, just being so vulnerable about it, because I think it's when we show up and have this real conversation with each other in a room that people can benefit from it. So there's people out there who are back when you were too embarrassed to talk about it. Yeah. And to hear you say, you know what, I was embarrassed, but I seeked out, I did it, and it totally impacted my life. Like, that's a life-changing thing.
It absolutely was.
That
absolutely.
You can give.
And just feeling comfortable with it. And, hey, am I all fixed and better? I don't know about that, but I'm aware of it. When I catch myself getting real hyper and, okay, I'm getting wound up now, and I tend to catch it and just try to take a deep breath and think of some of the things I've learned from, or what the doctors would suggest, or I should say doctors, or just people I was speaking to on, just relax, and what's the worst case that can happen, right? And that's what I kept putting, what is the worst outcome that's going to happen here, right? So,
well, I remember you told me a story, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you want to repeat it, go for it. I think it's an awesome story about, you had mentioned about driving in traffic and having people letting in people. I mean, if you want, I don't know if you want to tell that story. I think it's hilarious because I can relate. I think we all can relate to having road rage or getting frustrated in heavy traffic. Yeah. And if I remember correctly, the doctor gave you some pretty interesting advice.
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny you bring that up, because there's an area that I've really changed in. For example, and he made me, I know it sounds nice, but I was a road rage guy. I mean, if you cut in front of me, I'm out to chase you and give you the finger and tell you what I think of you. And, really, so he got that in my head for starters. But there was a certain route every morning going to work. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
So he wanted me to try this. And, for example, I always struggle with people, traffic's it's full on, but they go right to the top of the lineup and they're just butting in. They're not doing what everybody should be doing, right? So I'm the kind of guy I'm not even looking at you. There's not a chance I'm letting you in. Not going to happen. And I don't even look at him. I'm bumper to bumper with the guy in front of me, and like far as so my doctor thought this was quite comical that I was such a road rage guy, right? And so he wanted me to start practicing things. For example, I want you to take that exact same route, and tomorrow morning you're going to go in and you're going to let that guy in and tell him to have a good day and smile. And believe me, that was tough. Well, I don't like doing this, but here I am smiling and waving to the guy to have a good day. And I just, so it was.
But how did that? I love it, because now it's like you just gave me a tool.
Yeah, and I laughed all the way through it. But I'm saying he's right, and what's the big deal, But
I've remembered that for years.
With that,
I remember that for years because when I'm in traffic, my natural inclination is to do exactly what you suggested. I'm going to butt up against the car in front of me, and life is not fair, and this guy's not going to get in front of me. And I remembered what you told me about that, and I thought I'm going to try that too. And so I have to be honest, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, right? So I'm not suggesting I'm Mr. Zen. But I've thought about that ever since you told me, and I thought, wow, it's an interesting thing to aspire to. It's an interesting goal to aspire to have that level of calmness in your life in every facet where you're just so full of love and you're so full of generosity that, somebody it's on them if they choose to have the bad experience. And it's a great thing to aspire to, I mean, we're all human, so we're going to fall short a little bit, I think,
I had the old, pay it forward. Similar story happened to me at Timmy's a little while ago. I'm just going through the lineup, and this guy's just honking and screaming at everybody, and he's got the truck the size of this room, one of those guys, and that's fine. I mean, again, here I am judging, but not really, and I could just tell he's wound right up. So I just made a point of buying him a coffee and a muffin because I was ahead of him, and sent it back, and then I'm peeling away, and he actually came to the light beside me and apologized. You know, and I couldn't even believe it. I said, hey, don't worry about it. And that would have been me. So it was just funny how a little bit of role reversal. I just bought him a coffee and a muffin. And, of course, they tell you, he went to pay for whatever he got. And he said, oh, this guy paid $5 towards whatever he was buying. So, and then he came and I said, man, I'm sorry. I'm just having a bad day. I said, hey, hope you have a better one. Take care. You know, so that made me feel good, you know.
That's fascinating.
A $5 investment, you know what I mean? It's like $5. It wasn't a big deal, but all of a sudden,
that's awesome.
But you taking that time and doing something positive and nice for somebody else had the huge impact, and it ended up giving you the positivity walking away from it.
Absolutely, yeah. We both looked at each other, laughed, and have a good day, and it was like, hey, that actually felt good, you know. So
wow.
So guys, you heard it from Cezar. If you're having a bad day, go to the nearest coffee place and pay for somebody's coffee.
Well, it's always nice to be kind, I guess, and you feel good about it, no matter how big or how small it is, or just a simple smile, or just help somebody. It's just.
Isn't it a
goes a
beautiful
long way,
thing?
you know?
And when it's stressful, like I know for me, when I'm stressed out the most, those are the days that I want to tap into that positivity in the world the most. So those are the days I will try extra hard to open the door for somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or let somebody in traffic or get the coffee.
Still struggle with that one.
Yeah, totally.
But I do it. You know?
There's something you mentioned that I want to jump back to a bit earlier where you had mentioned the ADHD. And I thought it was fascinating how if you have a physical problem, like let's say I hurt my leg, I would have no shame in saying, oh, I got to go to the doctor, I have to go get surgery or whatever. But yet there's somehow this stigma mentally that, we only ever talk about it if there's something wrong. And what I love is, Cezar and I sat down a couple years ago and he said, I have ADHD. And I was like, oh, I don't even know what that is. Like I've heard of it, but not to any great experience. And I think it really helped our friendship because it was first and foremost being honest and intimate with each other about what we knew about it, what we didn't know about it. But then going forward, it allowed me to look at you in a different way so that if we were out and about shopping or maybe we're golfing or whatever it is, I knew this piece about you. And so I was able to filter things a bit differently. So had I not known, for example, I'd be like, wow, Cezar doesn't listen to me very often. And I wonder why. Well, if it's a noisy room, now I know if it's a noisy room, if we go to a restaurant, for example, and it's noisy, I know you have trouble concentrating. And so it's not a personal thing anymore. It's just, oh, well, that's the situation. And so I know that if I have something really important I want to tell you, I'll wait until we're in a quiet area or I'll wait till we're alone. And it's not like I was all offended before, but I was often confused by it. I would be like, well, I don't understand. Like, we're in a noisy restaurant. I don't understand why he's not able to hear my story as well as everybody else could or something. Right. Yeah. So I really appreciated that when you were honest about that, because I think it really brought our friendship to the next level, that we were able to be honest with each other, that it's not a big thing. We can overcome it, and there's nothing to be embarrassed about, but it was an extra piece of information that I think helped our friendship grow.
Just getting back to that, one of the suggestions my counselor made was telling people that you care about. You know what I mean? Not that I want to wave the flag, hey, look what I got. I'm fighting depression. I'm fighting AD. I'm nuts. You know what I mean? But he did explain to me. He said, just for the simple reason that it'll explain things to them. And I'll just use an example with one of my bosses again at the Saddle Dome, Mike Franco, who I think the world of. I remember going in to talk to him about it and just saying, I'm not here to, I'm not bragging about any of this because there's nothing to brag about, but I've got some issues and I just want to, and he was so thankful, similar to what you just said, I told him, because there were moments where he was going, what is he doing? Right. Like, why is he doing this? But we had a good relationship. We were friends besides him being my boss. We were, he was always a real gentleman right from the get-go, and we started working there at the same time, so we worked together for a good 15, 16, 17 years together. But he thanked me for that because he said it just meant a lot, and all of a sudden he had a whole different outlook on it, So that's what I was trying to get to.
Yeah.
So
I love
that's
that.
Another beautiful tip, though. Like, I love it. I'm sitting back here taking everything you guys are saying. Yeah. But it's true. It's like you're stressful. And even if you're like stressed going through something, to reach out. First of all, I'm looking at two good friends side by side me right now, and how one friend is telling the other friend how much he respected and appreciated that honesty and vulnerability.
Absolutely.
And how it made them come together and bond together better as friends.
Yes.
So guys, anybody, just because you're going through that stressful moment and you feel alone, you always have that option to reach out and make that connection.
Yeah.
It's always there too.
Yeah.
It really helped me with all, like I said, whether it be with my friends, such as Karl we're talking about, or people I was working with. And, I didn't go around telling everybody, but as you said, you just pick your spots. You don't got to, go in and be telling the whole world what's going on with you and you're struggling with stuff. But he said it'll explain things to them that will make sense. And like I said, for yourself and for my boss, Mike, you did say thank you because he could take a step backwards and go, okay, we're okay. And at least, and more importantly, that I'm doing something about it or trying to do something about it,
But so your side of it now, because we heard Karl's side as your friend, and you just mentioned how your boss was so appreciative that you shared that information. Now, for you, the individual who's going through that stressful time, what did that do for you, sharing with people?
I think for them, number one, just let them know that, I have some issues I'm trying to deal with. But I think in the big picture, I just knew I am going to get through this. I'm going to get some help, and somehow we're going to make these changes. And some days will be easy, some days won't. But we're on it. We're going to fix it, And as I said, I just tried the medication for a while, and that seemed to help. So.
And the ability of being able to tell people, did that offer you anything else?
Yeah, I think because one thing the counselor stressed to me was telling people you care about. You don't just have to go make it a casual conversation in your life all the time. But he said just the people that you work with daily, whether it be in the band, whether it be in the office, whether it be friends, just you just let them know that you're going through a few things.
And how did that impact your relationship with them?
Yeah, did you know that friends like me were supporting you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, there was I think I surprised a few people, like
Sure.
like my friend, my boss, and he went, "Oh, I never knew you were," many ways. But I think actually me telling him this, bells were going off in his head. Where as he said, there was times that he was kind of scratching his head on a couple of things I was doing. But yeah, he was real happy, and so was I. I just felt better that I could tell him why I was doing some of those weird things I was doing.
I'm really surprised at how common depression is in the world. Like I'm constantly surprised by it, and I know I shouldn't be. So I'm just being honest. I don't have that level of recognition that I should have in the world. I'm not aware enough in it, but I'm constantly aware. I remember when you told me, and I just went, "What?" Because exactly what you mentioned. I thought depression was walking around sad all the time. Well, you're one of the most upbeat, funny people I know in the world. I mean, you're amazing. And so for me, I was like, he's got depression, oh my goodness. And it was shocking to me. And so I mean, again, I appreciate you letting me know, but I didn't even know what it was. I did research after you told me too. I was going, well, it's not what I think it is. So I had to really drill down on what it meant to even have clinical depression or seasonal affectiveness disorder or any of these things. I didn't know what they were.
Yeah, nor did I. And be example, like that's I go back to that Friday night. I was going, what is going on in my world? Because this is, like I said, I didn't like myself. I didn't like the way I was reacting. And then outside, I mean, I really thought I was at least, I was acting normal in my mind. That I thought, but when I got home and did some soul searching, it was tough to deal with at first. But I realized that, as I said a few times today, there was some help there to be had. And I was going to get there.
I love too about how our friendship has grown over the years, that we can talk about this stuff openly too. And I'll give you a quick example. When I first met Cezar, we went golfing a couple times, and we'd go golf out of town. So he would come by and pick me up in the morning, and we'd go for a golf. Well, I have to be honest, it was painful because, as he mentioned, and I'm not telling tales out of school, but the road rage was off the charts back in those days. So even just to drive out to the golf course, it was really uncomfortable. But I'd never had the courage to tell him because we had only known each other for a few years, right? And then we'd golf for the day and we'd drive back home, and I go, man. But now we can kind of joke about it because we've all got those issues. Like, for example, I have issues when I played goaltender in hockey, and Cezar always jokes about it because I would get really stressed out about it. So I can totally, it's more like we're coming at it from the same place. Like we can support each other and go, I've been there too, as opposed to silently going, oh man, you get home at the end of the day and you go, man, that was really tough, but I didn't want to tell him about it. Now we can totally tell each other about it. We can joke about it almost like, you've got your issues, I've got my issues, and we're here to support each other rather than suffer through them. We can be like, no, we're working on it. And we can be open and honest about us working on it. I just think that's so cool. I love that level of friendship that we have.
I very much agree. I know we had some funny times on the golf course and on the ice. So
and on the ice,
we'll
exactly.
Just leave that. Nobody needs to hear that kind of stuff. But
Totally.
there were some comical moments, and we were both shaking our heads at times. But here we are, friends, many years later.
Absolutely,
it's a great friendship.
So going through those moments and reaching out, first of all, getting some amazing tools, which I love, and I'm very appreciative that you're sharing with us today. So talking to people was one of them. using some of the tips and tricks that other people in your life kind of gave you to be able to get through. I think it's all valuable information like books or friends or even professionals. Now, having that kind of, I want to say, tools in your tool belt almost, how did that help you for the next stressful time in your life? Because, like, you're sitting here, first of all, me and Karl are dreaming about retirement. I know I have been. But, like, it's a change. It's got to be a stress.
I would think it's one of the
life.
biggest stressful changes in your life, I would think, is disengaging from a full-time job. And you wake, like, what was that first moment like? You wake up and it's Monday morning and you don't have a full-time job anymore. What was that
Besides
feeling
the
like?
celebration.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have to be honest, there wasn't much stress to the retirement factor at all. I mean, you think about things, of course. You're trying to plan and, hoping you have enough money and you start... but certainly never stress. I was excited more than stress. I don't even think the word... I think I left the stress at work, if that makes any sense, and just knowing that I don't have to deal with that. And that was the biggest. I mean, that first day was unbelievable. It was a beautiful day.
Were you ever nervous? Were you ever nervous about being bored or growing old and being lonely? Like, did any of these sort of stereotypical thoughts about retirement ever come into your mind?
Well, yes. I mean, I had many friends tell me I'm going to be bored and I'm going to be and I'm 3 years in and I haven't hit the bored stage once. I have to be honest. I can't think of any day that I'm sitting around. I am bored. I got nothing to do. And I guess it's just really not my personality. As far as retirement, I think keeping active, and for me, I have to keep active, and I am. I play hockey 3 or 4 times a week. I go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week. Myself and my wife, Christine, we drive autistic kids from home to school, and then we pick them up again in the afternoon. So it's kind of nice. You got to be up out of the house. It was funny when I was interviewing for that position. They asked me what I like about retirement. I said, getting up when I want and avoiding traffic. She said, well, you're going to be doing both. But it was a whole different, I mean, I'm going for 45 minutes in the morning. But there's things I like about it. It gets me up and out of the house. And 9 times out of 10, I'm either going to the gym by 9 o'clock or I'm going home, getting my hockey stuff together, and off to the rink I go.
So it feels like, to me, as you're sitting here telling me, that you've taken the time to recognize things that you love and that make you feel important, and you've placed those throughout your day for success.
Yeah, and haven't even touched on the music stuff yet. I'm still playing. I'm freelancing as a musician. I'm in a couple of different bands, and I'm still practicing as much as I ever have. So between all of it, I'm a busy guy. So when people say, "Are you bored?" I'm not even close to being there.
It's amazing to me, just talking about just the bass and just the musician piece of it, the lifelong learning that you've really embraced. Having known you for many years, I always looked, especially when I first met you, I always looked at you as like a super expert on the bass. And you are. I'm not taking that away. But what strikes me is the amount of new things you're constantly learning, new songs, new arrangements. At one point, you just bought a drum set, decided to play drums. And I was just like, wow, you could have totally rested on all of the things you've done. And you never bring those up. You're always the first to embrace something new and talk about a new song and a new adventure and a new band. I just think that's so cool when you don't have to do that.
No, but I guess, going back to the passion, to me, it's not work. It's not like something, I got to do this. I don't want to do this. I mean, we all have days. There's days I have to bit, where I'm learning or doing some stuff musically that may not be all that interesting, but I still enjoy it. But in the big picture, it's a great thing. I love it.
So, Dan, after sitting back and telling us about your life and kind of everything you've learned over the years, if you could shoot some advice back to maybe 30 years ago or maybe some time in your life that you were going through a lot of stress, what would be some advice that you would hand out there?
Thinking about that, I would have to say not being afraid to ask questions and not being embarrassed about it, which I was until, the last, I would say, 10 years. But prior to that, if anything was going a little rocky for me, I would never talk about it. I would just kind of keep it inside and hold it in. And that's where stress all came from, right? So it just keeps building. But certainly reaching out, getting some help, not being afraid to get help. And there's nothing wrong with it. There's many people dealing with the same situation.
And since you've done that, you've taken those steps, you've been, my favorite word ever, vulnerable, and had those connections. How do you think that have that has impacted your life?
Oh, it very much helped me out in many aspects. The main one just being I'm aware of it, getting the help, and like I said, it's not a matter of taking a drug and you're going to be cured. But yeah, it's just a matter of admitting it, having friends that you can talk to about it, reaching out, and getting some professional help that can certainly guide you down the right path.
Yeah, it's a fascinating conversation, and we're so grateful for the time that you've spent with us today. There's about 3 or 4 takeaways that I know, have really hit me hard in this interview. The first one is about seeking out and talking to people.
Yeah, seeking out and talking to people. Like I tear up, and I get so excited when people they're just vulnerable with each other, because I see that as an opportunity for connection and to be heard and to realize you're not so alone and that you don't have to do this all by yourself. So I beyond appreciate you coming and telling us about your process, because I believe if anybody out here listening today can take that away, like what a beautiful gift to be able to give them.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and as I said, you just nothing to be embarrassed about. That's the biggest thing, and I was, but I think most people are, or you're afraid about making that step too. And it really helped me out, and it's just nice to talk about it too. Professionals that know what they're doing, guide you in and out of certain situations. But
another thing that really hit me in this interview is the amount of charitable work that Cezar's done. It's funny you mention the driving of the children, and I know we've been, not that I'm trying to brag about myself, but I mean I am proud of it. We've also given blood over the years, many times, and that's a nice. It's a social event too, right? The 3 of us have gone out to go give blood, and then we usually go out for dinner afterwards or something. And I find charitable work is so rewarding on so many levels, and not just aren't we so great, but it's like the bonding as a group. I really enjoy that.
It's the gift that keeps giving, and that's not just blood. But it's charitable work. It's giving the blood. It's the foundations you dedicate your time towards. It's driving kids to school programs or reaching out to hospitals or old age homes. It's that giving back, and I find it funny a little bit, because they always say, "Oh, you're doing such good work." But I feel it's such positivity that builds up inside yourself. So I feel as much as you're seen as giving, I feel you get so much from those types of work too.
Absolutely get that back. When you're giving, it's just such a great feeling, no matter how little or how big it is. It's just, puts you in a great mood, and there's something to be said about being kind to everyone. It's just, it makes you feel good. It's simple.
Another thing that's really struck me in this interview is, and I don't mean popularity, I mean the friendships, the true relationships. One of the things that I've looked at Cezar over the years as one of my mentors in my life is the relationships that he has with people. Genuine friendships, genuine business relationships, genuine coworker relationships. And it's something that I've tried to model over the years. I don't know if I've ever told you this, so this might come as a surprise, but having worked in finance for many years, my job was sitting in front of a computer, and I would often not talk to many people. And you really showed me the value of having high quality relationships with people in your life. So that's something that I've learned from you and tried to model over the years. So I just think, I love the fact that we're friends, and our friendship has grown over the years. It's funny, we haven't worked together for 10 years, and yet you're still such a huge part of my life, and I'm so grateful for that.
Well, feelings mutual.
And talking about, I love it. I get to witness right here, guys. I wish you could see what I'm seeing, is the appreciation and the bonding and the connection, and all because somebody had the ability and the willingness to show up and be seen and have a conversation, and that allowed to build such a beautiful friendship. And I think that's something to take away. It's such a beautiful gift to give yourself and to give those people around you.
Yeah, it's great to be able to connect with the real you, and I feel that way about all of my friends. But I mean, I love the idea that I don't have to wear a mask, or I don't have to watch what I say. I can be the real me, and you can be the real you. And I just love that we can spend time together and truly enjoy each other's company.
That's what a good friendship's all about.
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
Just wrap it up right there. It's when you're comfortable with each other, you can pretty much talk about anything.
I love it.
It's a good feeling.
See, guys, so you got so many good tools here. You got somebody who had the willingness and courage to come on today and kind of walk through their process of how they dealt with stress. And hopefully we're able to kind of have some good tools left in your ear as you go through your day.
Fantastic. So on that note, we'll wrap it up. Another episode of Power Yourself. Now, we encourage you to follow us on Facebook. We also encourage you, Jillian, you've got another hot tip here for social media.
Well, I like the iTunes pitch. Like
Yes.
us on iTunes. Give us a review.
Yes. So go on to iTunes, leave us a review. It really helps with the search results. And as always, we encourage you to get involved in the discussion. Leave us a comment. Like us, follow us. We really appreciate you guys listening, and we really want you to use it and connect with each other and ourselves. Thank you so much for your time. So for Power Yourself, I'm Karl. Thank you to Dan Cezar, our guest. And thank you, Jillian.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having me.
We'll talk to you next time on Power Yourself. Bye for now.